Welcome into another episode of Dad's in Time Out. This is your host, Jesse Williams, aka J Will, if you're still on that train. And today we have a lot of topics to talk about. So, I don't really have an outline. I just have some topics I want to talk about within the NFL, college football, John Gruden, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons. So it's kind of going to be a hodgepodge podcast, just going over some of the things that have happened in the last week and a half, 2 weeks since I have given you guys an episode. So be sure to follow me on Twitter at JWillSportsGuy and follow this channel, Dad's in Timeout, on YouTube. We will be getting back into the podcasting on Spotify and Apple and Google and all that when I get behind the mic on the computer. I reported last time that my computer was dead. Well, it was just really dead, and when I charged it for like 15 hours, it came back on. So the battery was super dead and needed a supercharge, I guess. So we still have the opportunity to do that. So, Arkansas fans, not going to go too hard at you guys. I'm an Arkansas fan too. After the Georgia game. So I didn't do a podcast after the Georgia game. I didn't want to come on here and be like, I told you so, because some people, not the majority, but some people were talking national championship and we could beat Georgia. And my big thing was like, let's just pump the brakes. We're not there yet. And I don't want to say we because I'm not a part of the team, but the Arkansas football team is not there yet. And now they're ranked 17th after losing to Ole Miss. They lost 52-51, I think, or 55-54. I don't remember the final score. I think it was 52-51. They went for two. They didn't get it. I would have gone for two in that situation. I don't think the defense could have held up at all in overtime. Ole Miss was moving the ball. Arkansas did have some good defensive stops. But going back to the Georgia game, Georgia is now the number one team in the country. And a lot of people had criticism of KJ Jefferson after that game, and then he goes and does what he does against Ole Miss, and I wish the young man nothing but the best. He threw the ball better than he had at any point in his career. He can still run the ball. I still think the offense leaves some stuff to be desired, but this is a team that was supposed to finish near the bottom of the SEC, and except for against Georgia, they've been competitive in every single game, and they're 4-2. 2 more games gets them a bowl game. And not a COVID bowl game where they would have got in with 3 wins because they were just letting everybody in a bowl game last year. And Arkansas won 3 SEC games. And now they're staring at 1-2 in the SEC. But I think they have a good chance to beat Auburn. They've played in Dallas, Texas, or Arlington against A&M. Then they had to go play at Georgia and at Ole Miss. Program's in a good spot. Don't get too low, don't get too high. That's always kind of my motto in life, is just try to stay as even-keeled as possible. It's a long season. There's winnable games on this schedule. LSU and Alabama will be tough, but I think that we can be competitive. Alabama's defense doesn't seem to be as... It's the first time Joel Klatt, I think, said this, or Colin Cowherd. It's the first time since Nick Saban's first year at Bama that they're giving up over 20 points a game. They're giving up 22 points a game, which isn't a lot. But it's a lot for Alabama. So Alabama, as we saw, lost to A&M. And now people are going to be like, well, Arkansas beat A&M, and then A&M beat Alabama, and now Arkansas could beat... I mean, you can use that logic, but let's wait till that game happens and see how this progresses. A&M played a great game against Bama. Bama had opportunities they left on the field. Alabama should have won that game. They shot themselves in the foot a couple times. I didn't see Iowa against Penn State. I followed it on the phone. I don't know if Iowa's the second best team in the country. I hear Cincinnati has a great quarterback, but as this thing progresses, right now you have undefeated Iowa, undefeated Michigan, and undefeated Michigan State in the Big Ten. And then you have 1 loss Penn State, 1 loss Ohio State. And the thing is, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Penn State are all going to play each other. If Alabama wins out and Georgia wins out and Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, the SEC will probably get 2 teams in. This could be a year where we see only 2 conferences represented. The ACC is a mess. The Pac-12 doesn't have a dominant team. I think Arizona State is in first place in that conference. I'm not quite sure. I think UCLA only has one loss. Oregon's still up there. But and then the Big 12, Oklahoma just lost to Texas, who has, I think, 2 losses? Because Texas is ranked really low. I think Texas has 2 losses. I know they beat Texas Tech. I know they lost to Arkansas. They destroyed Texas Tech. They beat TCU and they beat Oklahoma. They just lost to Oklahoma, yeah, so that's their second loss. So Oklahoma's still undefeated, but they benched Spencer Rattler for Caleb Williams, I think is his name. And so that's going to be interesting. So you could see 2 teams from either the Big Ten or the SEC. And it's too early to get into playoff scenarios, but the Pac-12 and the ACC look like they're going to be on the outside looking in. So it's really between those 3 conferences. Texas already has 2 losses. They don't have another game on their schedule that I think can impress the committee enough, unless somehow they face, but there's no title game. So they're already behind in a tiebreaker to Oklahoma. So Oklahoma would have to lose 2 games in the rest of the season for Texas to even have a shot at the Big 12 title. So that's my college football analysis. I know it's not a lot, but it's a very interesting season this year. We don't have a lot of top-flight quarterbacks coming out like we did. Rattler's was supposed to be the number 1 guy, but we saw that we don't know what the situation with Oklahoma is going to be going forward. Bryce Young, to me, is still the cream of the crop. I'm interested in the quarterback from Ohio State, Stroud, I think is his name. And so I'd have to look at these guys a little closer to see. And this could be a year where Cincinnati gets into the playoff if they win out and they win convincingly. But it's a long season. Alabama and so Michigan's undefeated. They still have Michigan State, Penn State, and Ohio State on their schedule. I think all those games are on the road except for Ohio State, the last game of the season. I don't know how good Michigan State is. We'll see when their competition toughens up. And so the Big Ten's interesting. I still think the SEC from a talent perspective is better, but the Big Ten may be deeper this year as far as top-end talent. But the rankings will sort themselves out. Interesting season. Arkansas fans, don't be too hard on the Hogs. I still think they have a great season ahead of them. I could see 8 wins. They might even get 9. Even 7 would be better than we've had since 2016. So let's just be okay with where we're at and, congratulate the kids that are playing their butts off and the coaching staff. I didn't like the play to end the game, but, things happen. And that would have been a great win. But I think Arkansas, realistically, is a top 25 team, but near the bottom of the top 25. And maybe they're a mid-15, 16, 17, 18, 19 team. But still way better than under Chad Morris, way better than under the end of the Bielema years. So let's just see how everything works out. Where do I want to go next? We might as well address the elephant in the room, John Gruden. So John Gruden leaked emails from the investigation into the Washington football team for workplace misconduct, which was, in my understanding, based around workplace harassment of females. And then John Gruden said a bunch of stuff I'm not going to repeat about DeMaurice Smith, but there were obviously some allegedly racial things. And I know he tried to say that he talks about that about everybody, but whatever. And then he had the misogynist comments about female referees, and then calling Goodell the P word, and then getting on to Goodell for the Rams feeling pressured to draft Michael Sam, even though Michael Sam was a pretty good college player, but it was all based on his sexuality. So John Gruden had to go. I wasn't surprised by any of this, just because of vulgarity has always been how he is, and I'm not justifying anything he did. Number one, it's amazing you feel that comfortable in the last 7 years saying the things you were saying in the emails. Shannon Sharp made a good point. He only apologized by saying, I never meant to hurt anybody. I don't want to be a distraction. Never apologized to the people that he offended. And you know me, I'm not about cancel culture and all that, but this isn't cancel culture. This is a guy that's just been nilly-willy saying whatever he wants, and then he gets exposed, and the Raiders had to make this move. I guess they get out of his contract since he resigned. So there's no way I think he's going to be able to fight for any of that money left on his contract. He's probably out of TV and football for the foreseeable future, maybe forever. And it just goes to say that, first off, whatever you say in life will come back to bite you. You shouldn't be saying things that are misogynistic. You shouldn't be saying homophobic things. You shouldn't be saying things based on gender, whether or not you agree with homosexuality or transgenderism. I mean, if you disagree with females in sports at this point, I don't really know what to tell you except you're wrong. And so, homophobic slurs and all that, wherever you stand on these issues, it's never right to use that terminology. And it's never right to not be repentant for a Christian term. Like, there doesn't seem to, like, he doesn't really seem to feel bad about what he said. He seems to feel worse that he lost his job. And so, I mean, I was never a huge John Gruden fan anyways. I like that little quarterback show that he did, but this is bigger than John Gruden. Because there's going to be more. There's going to be more emails. Because if he was saying this to Bruce Allen, and Bruce Allen was just like nilly-willy cool with it, I think he was like the president of the Washington football team back in the day, or like, because Dan Snyder's the owner who had to relinquish day-to-day operations. It's just a mess. I mean, that whole, like, remember when Trump was all like, this is locker room talk, this is how people talk, this is how men talk? No. And if men do talk that way, but we shouldn't, right? Men should honor women. We should respect people's choices. If you want to be gay, be gay. If you want to be a man and become a woman, like, that's your right. Whether or not I agree with it, whether or not you agree with it, is beyond the point. It's not anyone's job to be out here using slurs, right? And so, whatever, like, in this situation, whatever you believe doesn't matter. But I'm not surprised. I mean, Gruden took the fall. There's going to be more fallout. We've just got to get to a point in society where we respect everybody as a human being. And I believe, even in a Christian context, whether or not we agree with someone's lifestyle doesn't mean we disrespect that human being. That's where a lot of mistakes come in, and people say, well, when they hear I'm a Christian, they're like, oh, you're homophobic. And I'm like, no. If you're outside the church, first off, whatever I believe about how you should act doesn't matter, because you don't even believe in the same God that I believe in. Let's say you're an atheist. Like, I don't really have an opinion on your lifestyle if you're not dedicated to Christ, right? So it has nothing to do with me. You live your life the way that you see fit, as long as you're not harming other people. You get into pedophilia, that's totally different. Like, that's a victim crime, right? But hey, like, people do things every day that we disagree with. Doesn't mean we call them names and bullying and all that. And speaking of bullying, John Gruden has always been a bully. He's always bullied his quarterbacks. He's always looked for the next quarterback. It's always been about John Gruden. So why would we expect anything different here? I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because other outlets have covered it. Gruden was wrong. Gruden deserved to not be the coach anymore. And I hope he learns from this and just treats people better. Because at the end of the day, yeah, he deserved to lose his job. But at the end of the day, like, you want people, like, so let's say that a guy's a racist, right? And we should be, like, criticizing people for being racist. And I'm not saying John Gruden, I'm saying in general, right? The hope is that through education and through conversation, that maybe that person stops being racist. But see, the cancel culture is what gets me upset, is because we act like you're this one thing, you're always going to be this one thing. Well, in Christianity, once you give your life to Jesus, you're supposed to be changed, right? And so, instead of just canceling somebody, now, if this person has proven they're just blatantly living this way and not going to change their ways, then yeah, like, we're not going to support bullying of anything, right? Like if I see a pastor just railing against, like, Islam, right? You can say that you don't believe in Islam, but then if you're bullying Muslims, that's wrong too. Just like Christians shouldn't be bullied. We should all just respect each other. I mean, either you're going to become a Christian or you're not, but we should all still live in this earth with respect, right? I've been deployed to 2 Muslim countries. I disagree with Islam as a religious belief system, but I have Muslim friends, and I would never say anything to disrespect them. I can disagree with what you believe in and still respect you as a human being. That's my big point on that. Kyrie Irving. So, if you don't know by now, I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. I was born in Akron, Ohio in 1984. I've said this many times on this podcast and on previous podcasts. The Cleveland Cavaliers championship hat that I bought actually has the number 2 in the Kyrie signature. Now, Kyrie didn't sign it. It was already on the hat, right? Because they didn't have a LeBron one. And Kyrie hit the shot. But Kyrie, let's go through Kyrie's history. So Kyrie wanted out of Cleveland because LeBron was overbearing and he wanted his own team. Cool. Then he goes to Boston and wants to be the leader. And he throws his teammates under the bus. And then he goes and says, I'm going to sign, or he says, I plan to sign with Boston if you guys will have me, blah, blah, blah. Then he jets for Brooklyn, and then, of course, he's taken time off last year. He believes the earth is flat. He was asking his Brad Stevens about what does government mean to him. Listen, I'm not here to say whether or not Kyrie is a deep thinker, whether he's an outside-the-box thinker. Whatever y'all want to think about vaccines is your prerogative. I'm not promoting the vaccine. I'm not denouncing the vaccine. It's, hey, like, it's up to you. Trust your doctor, blah, 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 right? But here are the fact of the matter. And I'm not for vaccine mandates. That's just my thing. But the city of New York has a vaccine mandate. So if he is going to play in Brooklyn, he would have to get the vaccine. That's just the reality of the situation, whether I agree with it or not. It is what it is. Like, at some point you have to say, okay, I disagree with this, but this is the situation that is at hand. So now it comes out that Kyrie wants to be the voice for the voiceless for those people who are losing their jobs in vaccines. Well, let me ask you, Kyrie, are you hiring anyone that's been fired for not getting the vaccine? Because I also don't think you should lose your job, but whatever. We're not going to get into a COVID conversation here. What I will say is, why are you just now saying this? And the news now is the Nets are saying, Kyrie, go home. Until you get vaccinated, we're not going to play you on the road. We'll still pay you. I'm assuming they're still going to pay him for the road games because he's eligible to play road games, but they're just sending him away. So they still pay him for those games. But he's not going to get paid for the home games that he has to miss. And also, he can't play against the Knicks because it's New York Knicks. So, all right, had to take a quick break. I'm back. So we were talking about Kyrie and his voice for the voiceless, and the Nets are saying that he's not going to be available. Supposedly, Kevin Durant and James Harden signed off on this, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on Kyrie, but it is interesting that everyone else seems to have gotten the vaccine except for Kyrie. And so, I don't know if this is the Nets calling his bluff, or because Kyrie's always been he took time off after the Capitol riots last year. Whatever you think about that, I don't really care. Well, first off, I would say you should never just storm the Capitol building and go against police when your whole thing is like Blue Lives Matter and all that, right? So, without getting too political, Kyrie took time off because of that. Supposedly, you have to have a vaccination to get onto an Indian reservation. Well, he's been seen on Indian reservations playing basketball with kids without the vaccine, without a mask on. So, to me, this is just Kyrie being Kyrie. Kyrie staying in the news. Kyrie being about Kyrie. And so, the story's been reported. Ben Simmons, let's talk about Ben Simmons. He's like, I'm never going to play another game for the Philadelphia 76ers. I'll retire. And they're like, all right, cool. So we're going to fine you like $300,000 a day until you show up. Or something ridiculous like that. And he's like, hey, I'm going to show up. And I'm going to show up before you expect me to show up. I get that Embiid and Doc threw him under the bus after the playoffs last year. But also, like, this is self-inflicted. Like, you've been in the league how long and you won't learn how to shoot? Like, not even threes, bro. Like, any kind of jump shot. Like, he shoots one, and he's like, oh, he's shooting. And then we can see all these videos of him shooting threes in the offseason. It's like, why are you even showing us these videos if you ain't going to do it in the game, dog? Like, high school, college, whatever. Like, you get paid millions of dollars a year. And if you need sports psychology help, go get it. Because we ain't going to talk about your mental health because that's none of our business. And if it is a mental health issue, then I hope you get all the help you need. But he's basically the same player, just He's basically the same player he was when he came in the league. And Embiid was tired of it. And he said what he said. So I just think that's interesting on that note. That's enough of the NBA. We have months and months to cover the NBA. And I'll get into predictions and all that at a later time. Let's go to the NFL. So the Kansas City Chiefs are 2-3, and their defense is horrible. And Patrick Mahomes is still turning the ball over. Who did they lose to on Sunday? I don't even remember. They played they played Buffalo and got the brakes beat off of them. And Buffalo could have beat them worse. Buffalo was my preseason Super Bowl pick for the AFC. I still feel pretty good about it. I don't know if they'll sustain that because the Chargers, and the reason I have them above the Chargers is I love Justin Herbert. Like, I think he is awesome. I think he's great. He had like 5 total touchdowns the last game. The Herbert to Mike Williams connection is legit. If Austin Eckler stays healthy and Keenan Allen, like, that offense is just fantastic. And then they have Joey Bosa if he stays healthy. That's just a team that's going to scare a lot of people in the playoffs, but they do Charger-like things. Like, they really should be, because right now they're, 4-1? And they should be undefeated. Like, they did Charger things to have them lose the Cowboys game, and then they locked down the Cleveland Browns. I tried to tell y'all about the Cleveland Browns. Very talented. I think they'll make the playoffs. They might even win this division, but Baker coming from behind has just not been a thing that we've seen. He couldn't do it at Oklahoma in the playoff. He got close. Oh, he threw for a bunch of yards. Yeah, but he ended up not winning the game. They couldn't win the game against Kansas City, and they can't win the game against the Chargers. I'm not saying Baker Mayfield is whack. I'm saying Baker Mayfield is a franchise quarterback, but he may not be a Super Bowl winning quarterback unless you just surround him with like the dopest team of all time. So, the Baltimore Ravens, if Lamar Jackson can do this, they can win the Super Bowl. If the defense is good enough. And what I mean by that is this whole he won a playoff game. He's now 3-1 in his last 4 games where he's been down by 10 or more points. So the whole he can't come from behind. He's never going to look like a prototypical quarterback throwing, but I watched him sidearm a throw accurately into the end zone. I watched him throw a deep to Hollywood Brown. It's never going to look like your prototypical Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson throwing from the pocket, but 440 yards and 315 in the last game, like, he's getting the job done. So it's just a different way of doing it. And the Ravens are a great organization. I'm a Steelers fan, and yes, I'm saying they are a great organization. They have a Hall of Fame kicker. I think John Harbaugh's a Hall of Fame coach. I think they've left a couple Super Bowls on the board with the Flacco contract. But, I mean, dude won a Super Bowl after his 4th year in the league. I mean, you kind of got to pay him, but maybe not. Maybe this is showing you that just because a guy wins a Super Bowl. Now, remember, Flacco was amazing in that playoff run. But you've seen the Sunday 1 o'clock noon games where Flacco has looked like garbage. He's always played well against Pittsburgh, and he's always played well in the playoffs, and he seemed to always play well in prime time. But those 1 o'clock afternoon games, it was like, where's the cannon? Like, where is the Joe Flacco that is a Super Bowl winner? So now Lamar Jackson is there. They're on their 5th or 6th running back. The receivers, I think, are good enough. Sammy Watkins was a no-show, thank you, because that would have cost me a fantasy win. I'm 4-1 in one league. I'm 2-3 in my other 2 leagues, and I've never played Dynasty before, so Dynasty is kicking my butt just because I'm not. I could never be a general manager. I'll tell you that. I make dumb trades, all that. The Dallas Cowboys are 4-1. I'm kind of surprised, but I think I picked them to win the division just because they have the best quarterback in the division. Diggs, is it Trayvon Diggs? Is amazing. Micah Parsons, the defense is not bad anymore, and it gets turnovers. Dak isn't having to throw the ball 4,000 yards this season, or 5,000. People are like, he could get to 6,000 yards, and I'm like, yeah, they ain't going to be in the playoffs if he does that. Zeke has had a couple of good games, and with him and Pollard, you don't have to have Zeke get 1,700 yards. You can have Zeke get 1,100. He's averaging 5.2 yards a carry over the last couple games. Their receiving core has always been awesome. And then I think it's the Schultz guy, their tight end, has been playing amazing. Of course, somebody wants to rev their engines up in the background because that's cool. Yeah, so it's just been an interesting week. The baseball playoffs are going on. We'll get to that here in a minute. My Steelers won. Big Ben still looks old, and they almost lost that game to the Broncos. The Packers and the Bengals game was fascinating because no kicker wanted to win the game, it looked like, and Mason Crosby finally won it. Joe Burrow's going to die in Cincinnati if they don't protect him. Like, now he's on, like, a speaking limitation because he had to, like, get his throat checked out after the game. That dude is a warrior, though, bro. I love me some Joe Burrow. I think I said that on the last podcast. I love everything about this kid. And Jamar Chase, what about Jamar Chase dropping the ball in the preseason? Doesn't seem to matter now, does it? The guy was a year out of football, and Jamar Chase is a monster. Like, and the dudes the two of them already had, they already had rapport because they played together in the national championship year at LSU. So I was never worried about Jamar Chase. I hate to give the Bengals praise, but this Bengals team is different than the Marvin. And I never had an issue with Marvin Lewis. I had an issue with his teams. And I love Ocho Cinco, but they would just talk, and never win in the playoffs. Carson Palmer and then Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton wasn't a talker. Like, let me be clear. Andy Dalton was just overachieving. But even Hushmanzada, who I love as an analyst, and I love Ocho Cinco, but then the Burfict stuff, like the unnecessary hits and the, like, puffing out their chest. But these Bengals are different. They don't talk. Burrow says the right things. His receivers don't come out and say a lot. And if they ever can just get an offensive line, like, hey, listen, Mike Brown, owner of the Cincinnati Bengals, like, you have I'm going to go on a limb here. You have a Hall of Fame potential caliber quarterback. Because he has the maturity, he has the guts, he has the self-confidence that's building week by week, and he has the arm and the decision-making and the playmaking ability to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. And you have an elite wide receiver, and you have a really good one in T. Higgins, who I loved at Clemson. And then your third receiver is Tyler Boyd. You have Joe Mixon if he stays out of trouble and stays healthy. Like, this is a really good foundation for a football team. And the Steelers are down. I don't know what to do with the AFC South. I picked the Colts to win, but I think by this time when I was doing the schedule predictor, I had the Colts being 1-4 or 2-3, because their schedule was brutal coming out the gates. Carson Wentz played the best game he's played in probably 2 years, and it wasn't enough because their kicker decided to shank a field goal after getting one blocked. That kick that he missed at the end of regulation, all that told me was he was scared of it getting blocked again, is what it looked like to me. And I'm not dissing the guy. I can't kick a ball through an upright to save my life. I don't even think I've ever tried. And I feel bad for the guy. And then Lamar Jackson marches down the field and wins the game with a touchdown in overtime. Jonathan Taylor got an 87-yard or a 70-something yard touchdown reception, but they're still doing this like Hines and Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack running back room by committee thing. I think you just ride Taylor. That's what I would do. I loved him coming out of Wisconsin. He did pretty good for me as a rookie in fantasy. Last year, I think he was on my fantasy team. So, but then like the receivers are hurt. So who knows? Their defense isn't as good as it was. I still like Frank Wright. Carson Wentz looked good. He looked good. Better than he has in a long time. Can he keep it up? Who knows? Jameis is out here throwing touchdowns. He finally had a game where, once again, his stats are bolstered by the fact that he threw a really long touchdown pass. But he's still putting the ball in the end zone. Made one mistake, threw an interception. But, I mean, his mistakes have been limited. The team that I'm most... Oh, and then the Rams. Who did the Rams play? They played Seattle on Thursday night, and that's when Russell Wilson got hurt. Seahawks are toast. I had the Seahawks almost making the playoffs, but Colin makes great points. They're so outdated. Like, Pete Carroll either needs to adapt or retire. That's my big takeaway. Kyler Murray, I know that game was a defensive struggle between them and San Francisco. Trey Lance, I guess, got hurt too, sprained his knee. Doesn't know when he sprained his knee. I promise you, if I sprained my knee, I would know exactly when it happened. hope for his speedy recovery. Justin Fields has the Bears at 3-2, even though their defense is playing well. Like, good for him. Like, that first game was a debacle, but I mean, he's playing better. Zach Wilson is still a travesty. Oh, we never talked about the twerking story with Urban Meyer. Listen, dog, you in the NFL, and you're married, and you always preach about doing things the right way. Can't have that happen. I'm not saying the Jaguars should fire him, but I never thought he was an NFL. I never thought the fit was great in the NFL, but Urban wins, but Urban never lasts anywhere. He's like 4 or 5 years here, 4 or 5 years here, takes a year off, comes back. Like, he's a great builder, and Jacksonville has a lot of potential on that roster. ETN will be back next year. James Robinson has been playing really well on one of my fantasy teams, saving my season. The receivers are what they are. So I have no idea. And then the Texans are just horrendous, even though they had a lead again. Like, I almost feel like they should go 1-16 this year, but for some reason we all hated the coach, but they're going to squeak out like 3 or 4 wins somehow this year. It's what it just looks like. They're winning. They win a game they shouldn't win. They're ahead in games they shouldn't be ahead in. But yet they're playing Davis Mills at quarterback, and they have the whole Deshaun thing going on. So the NFL's in an interesting spot. I have the Rams and the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. I still feel good about that. Tom Brady lit the world on fire against the Dolphins. Yeah, like, it's going to be a very, very... Oh, the Minnesota Vikings. I have no idea what to do with this team. I think they won against the Lions, but they made it seem way too difficult. Adam Thielen's been disappeared for the last couple weeks, so we'll see how that turns out. Hockey's back if anybody cares. Giants and Dodgers tomorrow night in the Major League Baseball. I know people are tired of the Dodgers, but I'm sick of the Giants winning World Series through analytics. That's just me. Never been a Giants fan. And then the Astros and the Red Sox are in the ALCS, so like the two teams that were implicated in the cheating scandal a couple years ago are now playing each other. Well, because Alex Cora was a bench coach. No. Yeah, Alex Cora was a bench coach with the Astros and then went to the Red Sox, and they suspended him for a year, and then they're like, your suspension's up, and the Boston Red Sox are like, yeah, we're going to hire that guy back because, he got us to a World Series. And they won the World Series. They beat the Dodgers. So wouldn't that be interesting, as if the Dodgers and the Red Sox play? Hopefully, I'm hoping for a Red Sox-Braves World Series, even though Ronald Acuna's out. So anyways, I could go on and talk your head off, but I'm going to cut this one short today. Got to get back to work. This has been another episode of Dad's in Timeout. I'm your host, Jesse Williams, a.k.a. J. Will. Check me out on Twitter at JWillSportsGuy. And like and subscribe on YouTube when you see this, and tell your friends. Till next time, peace out and God bless.